My wife cheated with her, asking me to sign over our $300, $0 house in the divorce, but I just found out she's been secretly laundering thousands from our joint account. I feel like I lost everything to her lies. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd wake up one day and find out that the woman I loved and trusted had been lying to me for years, cheating on me with her, and secretly siphoning money from our joint account. It was like a bomb went off in my head, and everything I thought I knew about her, about us, suddenly made no sense anymore. The worst part, I only found out because I was snooping around out of instinct, and what I uncovered shattered everything. We had been married for 10 years, and honestly I thought we were solid. We had our problems, sure, mostly just the usual stuff: work stress, kids, bills, the occasional argument. But I always believed we had a foundation, a real connection. I was the type to work hard, pay the mortgage, keep things stable. She was the pretty, bitchy wife who loved to throw tantrums if she didn't get her way but still managed to charm everyone around her. Her name was Jessica, and she had this way of acting like she was the queen of the world, demanding everything and acting like she was entitled to more. At first, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She was more secretive with her phone, always locking it when I was around. She'd disappear for hours during the day, claiming she was working late or meeting friends. She was suddenly more interested in her appearance, buying expensive clothes and makeup, even though she always said she didn't want to spend too much. But I shrugged it off. Maybe she was just trying to look good for herself, or maybe she was stressed about something. I was busy with my job, trying to keep everything afloat, so I didn't think much of it. Then came the real clues. One day, I noticed her phone bill had these strange numbers, calls that lasted only a few minutes and some that were made at odd hours. I decided to check her messages, and that's when I saw the texts. They weren't just innocent flirtations or workplace banter. They were explicit, suggestive, and downright disgusting. She was talking about sex, about meeting him, about how she loved the thrill of sneaking around. Her, a guy named Mark, who I'd heard her mention a couple of times but never thought much about. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I sat on it, trying to process how someone I trusted could do this to me. Then I started digging further. I looked into their conversations online, found out they'd been meeting up for months, sometimes late at night, sometimes during weekends when I thought she was out with friends or at work. I even found receipts for hotel stays, dinners, and gifts she bought for him, all paid from our joint bank account. I couldn't believe it. My wife, Jessica, was cheating on me with her, and she had been lying to my face about everything. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. I felt like I'd been living a lie. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made, the late nights at work, the time away from the kids, the money I worked so hard to provide. And she was out there, screwing someone else, asking him to meet her for sex, telling him how much she loved the thrill of hiding it from me. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly? And most of all, why? I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. It was time to face the monster she'd become. I wanted to hear her explain herself, to see if there was any way she could justify what she'd done. I remember sitting in the living room, my fists clenched, my stomach turning, waiting for her to come home from work. When she finally stepped through the door, her face was smug, like she knew she was in control. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Jessica, I know everything. About Mark, about the hotel stays, about the money you've been stealing. I saw the messages. The receipts. How long has this been going on?" Her reaction was instant. She rolled her eyes, scoffing, and said, "Oh, come on, David, you're overreacting. It's not what you think. It's just sex, a stupid fling. It doesn't mean anything. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I could see the guilt written all over her face, the way her voice cracked when she tried to deny it. I knew she was lying, just like she always did, with that bitchy attitude that made me want to shake her. That moment was the beginning of everything falling apart. I felt angry, hurt, betrayed, a cocktail of emotions I never expected to experience. I had trusted her for so long, and now I realized she'd been living a double life. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to demand answers. But I also knew I had to think clearly. I couldn't let her manipulate me again. I needed a plan, a way to get justice for myself, and to understand how deep her lies went. That's when I started digging into the financial side of things. I found out she'd been laundering thousands of dollars from our account, wiring money offshore under fake names, and spending it on her secret life. It was like I'd lost control of everything. I felt like I'd been robbed, not just of my wife but of my security, my savings, my peace of mind. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want to be with someone who'd do this to me. But I also knew I had to be smart about what I did next. She was cunning, and I had to catch her off guard if I wanted any chance of standing up for myself. I'll tell you, the feeling of betrayal is one thing, but the financial mess she left behind, that's a whole other level. I had no idea she'd been secretly draining our joint account, hiding money, and making plans to leave me with nothing. It was like she'd been planning her escape for months, and I was just the fool who didn't see it coming. I felt like I'd lost everything: my wife, my trust, my savings, my sense of stability. And I knew I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to fight back, had to find a way to take control of what was left and make her pay for what she'd done. If I'm being honest, I was terrified. Not just because of the betrayal, but because I didn't know how far she'd go or how much damage she'd caused. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, left reeling, trying to figure out my next move. That's where I am now, trying to piece my life back together after discovering the woman I loved had been playing me for months. The worst part, knowing she's still out there, probably lying to someone else, hiding her lies better than ever. And me? I'm just trying to survive this mess, figure out what's real, and maybe, just maybe, get some revenge. After I confronted Jessica that evening, everything changed in an instant. She sat there, smirking, acting like she hadn't just been caught red-handed. Her eyes were cold and her tone was dismissive when she told me I was overreacting, that it was just sex, just a stupid fling, and that I needed to get over myself. But I wasn't buying any of it. Not anymore. I could see the lies in her face, the way she was trying to downplay everything, but I knew her too well. I had seen the messages, the receipts, the hotel stays. This wasn't some innocent mistake. It was a full-blown affair, and she'd been hiding it from me for months. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. I was angry that she could do this to me, to us, and despair that I might have lost everything: my wife, my marriage, my savings, my sense of stability. I started thinking about what I needed to do next. I knew I couldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't happen. Jessica had also been siphoning money from our joint account, wiring thousands offshore under fake names, and making plans to leave me with nothing. It was like she'd been planning her escape for months, and I was just the fool who didn't see it coming. That night, I stayed up, going through every detail I could find. Her bank statements, her phone logs, her emails. Every piece of evidence pointed to a calculated effort to cover her tracks. It was clear she was trying to hide her affair and her financial trail. I also discovered that she'd been laundering money through fake invoices and shell companies, using our joint account as a personal piggy bank. I felt like I'd been robbed, not just of my wife, but of my security, my savings, my peace of mind. The reality hit me hard. I had been living with a woman who was capable of lying, cheating, and stealing from me with no remorse. I knew I had to act fast. I started talking to a lawyer the next day, trying to figure out my options. I wanted to divorce her, but I also knew I had to be smart about how I handled the financial fallout. I didn't want her to get away with this, not just the affair, but the money she'd stolen. I wanted to make her pay in whatever way I could. I also began secretly monitoring her, checking her emails, her phone, her social media. I needed to know if she was planning to leave, if she had any backup plans, or if she was trying to clean up her trail. Jessica, meanwhile, was still acting like nothing was wrong. She'd throw tantrums, scream at me, accuse me of being paranoid or jealous. She'd lie outright, claiming she was working late or had gone out with friends, but I knew better. I saw her sneaking around, texting Mark behind my back, hiding her phone when I came near. It was like she thought she was untouchable, that I wouldn't find out the truth. but I was done playing nice. I decided I'd catch her in the act if I had to. One day, I installed a few discreet apps on her phone just to keep an eye on her activity. I wanted to know exactly where she was, who she was talking to, and what she was up to. What I found was even worse than I expected. She was still texting Mark, planning to meet him again, even as she pretended to be innocent. I also saw she'd transferred more money out of our account that morning, trying to clean her financial tracks. That was the last straw. I realized I had to act decisively if I wanted to stop her from taking everything, including our house, our savings, and whatever shred of dignity I had left. So I made a move. I contacted my lawyer and told him everything. We drafted papers to freeze her accounts, and I also filed for divorce. I wanted her out of my life for good, but I also had a plan. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with my money and my life. I started gathering all the evidence, organizing it into a file I could use in court. I also contacted a private investigator just to verify some of her activities and gather proof of her ongoing affair and financial misconduct. Jessica, of course, didn't take it well. She started throwing tantrums, accusing me of being paranoid, of spying on her, of ruining her life. She called me controlling, jealous, insecure, but I didn't care. I knew I had to protect myself. I knew that if I didn't do something now, I'd wake up one day with nothing, no house, no savings, no respect. I felt like I had been played for a fool long enough. Now it was time to fight back. I won't lie, there were moments I doubted myself. Moments I wondered if I was overreacting, if I was just being angry and bitter. But then I looked at all the evidence. All the lies, the money gone, the secret meetings with Mark. I realized I had no choice but to take control. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, pretending everything was fine. I had to confront her head on, even if it meant tearing my life apart. And that's exactly what I did. I prepared myself for the inevitable fallout, knowing full well that the coming days would be the hardest I'd ever face. The day I handed the divorce papers to Jessica, her reaction was exactly what I expected. A mix of denial, anger, and that signature bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control. She threw a tantrum right there in front of me, yelling about how I was ruining everything, how she hadn't done anything wrong, and how I was just a jealous, insecure husband who didn't understand her. She looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But I knew better. I had all the evidence, the texts, the bank statements, the receipts. I knew she was lying, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. The worst part, her reaction was just the beginning. That night she started pulling out all her tricks, trying to gaslight me into backing off. She insisted she loved me, that she'd never cheat, and that I was just paranoid. She threw in the classic line, "You're just jealous because I still have a life outside of you." I could see right through her. She was desperate, trying to save her own ass, and I wasn't going to let her. I told her I had enough proof to take her to court over the affair and the stolen money. That's when she really flipped out, screaming at me, calling me a controlling asshole and accusing me of ruining her life. But I wasn't backing down. I had made up my mind. I was done being the good husband who turned a blind eye. I wanted to see her sweat, to make her realize that her lies had consequences. I started working with my lawyer on the financial side of things, freezing her bank accounts, seizing the money she'd transferred offshore, and ensuring she couldn't drain any more from our joint account. I also hired the private investigator to keep tabs on her, making sure she wasn't planning to run or hide anything else. I knew she was capable of anything, especially now that she saw I was serious. Meanwhile, Jessica was trying to spin her story. She told friends, family, anyone who would listen that I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that she loved me and had only been unfaithful because I was never around. She painted herself as the victim, the wronged wife. But I knew better. I had the evidence. I knew her lies. I had seen her sneaking around with Mark, texting late at night, making plans to meet him again. I found out she'd even bought a new credit card, hidden away in her jewelry box to keep her secret purchases from me. She was a master at manipulation, but I refused to be fooled anymore. I started preparing for the inevitable court battle. I gathered all the proof I had, organized the financial records, and made sure I had a clear timeline of her lies. I also reached out to a forensic accountant to help me trace the money she'd stolen, to see exactly how much she'd taken and where. It went. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She wasn't just cheating, she was stealing from us, from our future, from everything I worked so hard for. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, left with nothing but a trail of lies and betrayal. Jessica, meanwhile, was trying to keep up appearances. She'd come home, act like everything was fine, and then explode in rage when I questioned her. She accused me of invading her privacy, of controlling her life, of trying to ruin her. But I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I was done playing nice. I wanted her out of my life, and I wanted justice. I knew I had to be strategic, so I kept quiet about what I knew, playing it smart so I could catch her in her own lies. I kept a detailed record of her activities, making sure I was prepared for the moment I could confront her in court with everything laid out on the table. That night I sat in my home office, going over the evidence again, feeling a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and dread because I knew this wasn't over yet. Jessica was still out there, probably planning her next move, trying to save herself. I also realized I was starting to feel a strange sense of clarity. I'd been so blinded by love and trust for so long that I hadn't seen the signs. Now, I was facing the reality of what she'd done, and I was determined not to let her get away with it. I had lost a lot already: my marriage, my peace of mind, and a chunk of my savings. But I still had my dignity, and I was going to fight for what was left of it. Looking back, I see how naive I was to think everything was perfect. I see now how she played me, how she lied and manipulated her way through our life together. But I also see that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I'm not going to let her ruin me or walk away with everything she took. I've started planning my next move carefully, knowing full well that the coming days will be the toughest I've faced. But I also know I'm not alone in this. I have the truth, and I have the evidence. And that's what's going to get me through. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, late-night research, and trying to keep my head clear despite the chaos Jessica was causing. Every time I thought I had a handle on the situation, she'd throw another curveball. She started calling me nonstop, trying to guilt-trip me with tears, accusing me of ruining her life, claiming she was only human and that everyone makes mistakes. She even went as far as to say she was sorry, but her apologies felt hollow, like she was just trying to save her own skin. Honestly, I didn't buy any of her crocodile tears. I knew her well enough to see she was just trying to manipulate me into backing down. I remember sitting across from my lawyer, Mark, who was excellent at reading people and their motives. We discussed everything: the evidence I had, her financial misconduct, the affair, the possibility of her trying to hide assets or leave the country. It was clear she was trying to set herself up for a quick escape, maybe even trying to transfer more money offshore or find some way to disappear before the court could intervene. That's when Mark told me I needed to act fast, to freeze her accounts, and to prepare for a long legal battle. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her, even installing a GPS tracker on her car. I didn't want to be the obsessive husband, but I needed to know if she was making any moves to run or hide. What I found was even more infuriating. She was still meeting with Mark, still texting him late at night, still planning her next steps. Every time I saw her with her phone, I felt a mixture of rage and helplessness. It was like she was deliberately trying to push me away, to make me feel powerless. But I refused to give her that satisfaction. One day, I caught her in a lie that was so blatant I almost couldn't believe I missed it before. She told me she was going to a yoga class after work, but I had seen her leaving a hotel with Mark the night before. She had tried to tell me she was at her sister, but I had the hotel receipts, the GPS logs, and her own messages to prove she was lying. That was the moment I knew I had to escalate my plans. I couldn't just threaten her with court. I had to come prepared with concrete proof, and I had to do it fast. I reached out to a forensic accountant again, asking him to trace every penny she'd stolen or laundered. The number was staggering. She had secretly moved over $50, $0 offshore, hidden in accounts under fake names, and used the money to fund her secret life. I couldn't believe she'd gone so far to cover her tracks. It made me realize how much she'd been planning this, how deeply she'd betrayed me. I felt like I'd been hit with a second punch, realizing that her lies weren't just emotional but financially destructive too. That night, I sat down with my lawyer and a plan started to take shape. We prepared to seize her assets, freeze her accounts, and serve her with a detailed financial disclosure. I wanted her to know I wasn't going down without a fight, that I had all the proof I needed to take her to court and expose her for who she really was. I also decided I'd file for full custody of the kids. I couldn't let her use her lies and manipulation to turn them against me. I was furious, but I knew I had to stay calm, strategic, and disciplined. Jessica, of course, didn't take it well. She started spreading rumors, trying to turn friends and family against me, claiming I was controlling and paranoid. She even accused me of cheating, which was laughable considering what I'd uncovered about her. She told everyone I was just jealous because she was living her life, and that I was trying to ruin her. But I knew the truth. I wasn't the one lying, cheating, or stealing. She was, and I had enough evidence to prove it all. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I had finally started to piece everything together, and I knew I was taking control. Dread because I knew the fight wasn't over and Jessica wasn't going to go down without a fight. She was resourceful and manipulative, and I was pretty sure she had some tricks up her sleeve. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to stay strong, keep my focus on the legal battle ahead, and make sure I protected myself and my kids from her lies and schemes. One thing I realized through all this is how much I'd been blind. I thought I knew her, but I didn't see the signs until it was almost too late. I trusted her blindly, and she took advantage of that trust. But now I was learning the hard way that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, to uncover the truth, hold on to what's rightfully yours, and never let someone manipulate or betray you without consequences. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything. Not this time. The court date finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Jessica showed up looking like she had prepared a speech, her face tight with anger and that smirk that told me she still thought she was in control. I knew better. I had everything laid out, evidence of her affair, the stolen money, the offshore accounts, the hotel receipts, everything. I could see her trying to manipulate the judge, throwing in her usual bitchy comments about how I was controlling and paranoid. But I had the facts and I had the law on my side. When the judge asked about the financial misconduct, I presented my evidence. My forensic accountant had prepared a detailed report showing how Jessica had laundered thousands, hidden assets, and moved money offshore. I explained how she'd been having an affair with Mark, meeting him late at night, and using our joint account to fund her secret life. Jessica's face twisted with rage when I laid it all out, but she couldn't deny the facts. She tried to spin it, saying I was just jealous and insecure, but I knew better. The court saw through her lies. What really angered her was when I requested full custody of the kids. I told the judge I was worried about her manipulative behavior, her constant lies, and her reckless spending. I wanted to protect my children from her toxic influence. Jessica's protests fell flat. She could only scream about how unfair everything was, how I was ruining her life. But the judge was having none of it. The evidence was too clear, and her behavior was clearly unfit. The court awarded me primary custody, with supervised visits for Jessica until she proved she could be a responsible mother. The financial settlement was another major victory. The court ordered her to pay back all the money she'd stolen, plus interest, and to freeze any offshore accounts linked to her laundering scheme. She was furious, yelling, calling me every name in the book, but I didn't care. I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing I was finally taking back control. I also made sure she signed over the house, the one we bought together, worth over $300, $0. She asked me to sign it over in the divorce settlement, but I refused. I wanted her to understand that she couldn't just cheat and steal her way out of accountability. I told her she'd have to earn her way back into my life if I ever let her. After the court ruling, Jessica's true colors came out even more. She started trying to manipulate the situation, claiming I was ruining her, that I was trying to punish her for her mistakes. But I knew better. I'd seen who she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what she wanted. I also found out she'd been secretly transferring more money out of our accounts, trying to hide her assets even after the court ordered her to disclose everything. That was the final straw. I filed a motion for contempt, and the judge issued a warrant for her to appear in court again. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Jessica moved out of the house, but not before leaving a trail of new lies and schemes. She tried to turn the kids against me, telling them I was the bad guy, but I fought hard to stay involved in their lives. I hired a counselor to help them process everything, and I made it clear I was still there for them, no matter what Jessica said. The financial mess she left behind was daunting. I had to hire extra accountants and lawyers to clean up her mess, and I knew it would take years to fully recover. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. I trusted the wrong person and I was by her lies, but I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty if you want to reclaim your life. I had to dig up her secrets, expose her lies, and stand firm against her manipulations. It's been a painful process, but I'm finally starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. I've built a new foundation for myself and my kids, and I refuse to let her destroy what's left of us. Now, I try to remind myself that I'm stronger than I thought, that even after the betrayal, I can pick up the pieces and move on. I wish I could say I'm fully healed, but I know I'll carry this pain for a long time. Still, I've come out of it with a clearer sense of who I am and what I deserve. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Don't ever ignore the signs of betrayal and never let someone manipulate you into thinking you're at fault. Stand up for yourself. Protect what's yours. And if someone shows you who they truly are, believe them the first time. The whole experience has left me shaken, but also with a strange sense of clarity I never had before. I used to think marriage was about trust, about sharing everything, but now I see it's also about knowing when to walk away and protect yourself. Jessica's betrayal was a wake-up call, a brutal reminder that people can hide who they really are behind a pretty face and a manipulative smile. I've learned that the hard way. Trust is something you earn, not just give blindly, and the moment someone shows you they're capable of lying, cheating, and stealing, you better believe it. Looking back, I realize I was naive for so long. I ignored the little signs, the secretive phone habits, the late nights, the disappearing acts, because I didn't want to believe she was capable of such betrayal. But once I uncovered the truth, everything changed. I had to become someone I barely recognized, a man who fought tooth and nail to get his life back. It wasn't easy. It cost me emotionally, financially, and spiritually. I lost my sense of security, my trust in her, and a part of myself that I don't think I'll ever get back. But I also gained something valuable, a new perspective. I see now that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly cares. I learned to look out for the warning signs, to listen to my instincts, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. The pain of betrayal is immense, but it's also a lesson, a harsh but necessary lesson about boundaries, about self-worth, and about the importance of standing up for myself. As for Jessica, she's still out there trying to rebuild her life, probably blaming everyone else for her mistakes. I don't hold any resentment anymore. I recognize that her actions speak for themselves. I hope she finds whatever she's looking for, but I know I won't be part of that anymore. I've closed that chapter and started a new one where I put myself first, where I rebuild what I lost, and where I finally start to heal. In the end, I want to tell anyone reading this that if you're in a similar situation, don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut. Protect yourself, even if it means facing uncomfortable truths or losing someone you love. Because in the end, the only person who truly has your back is you. No one else is coming to save you. You have to do that for yourself. And once you do, you realize how strong you really are. I've learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful for it now. It's made me sharper, wiser, and more prepared for whatever life throws next.